This is BBC News with the latest headlines for viewers in the UK and around the world. The UK's government defends the decision to make face coverings compulsory on public transport, but admits the benefits may be marginal.
On balance, we're convinced that it certainly can't do any harm. We think it will do some good, and that's why we think it's a good idea to introduce.
My concern, and I'll go
oh, this prick raises his fucking head again.
Because this could mean
so deep fucking can, ain't that fucking bastard dead yet?
Because there are some times you simply can't keep a social distance.
Brazil overtakes Italy as the country with the third highest coronavirus death toll, with more than 34,000 deaths.
Fuck off.
2 police officers are suspended in Buffalo in New York State after videos show they were shoving an elderly white man to the ground. Police say they have received hundreds of emails.
What can you expect when they're given powers like this?
Case. Dentists are given the go-ahead to reopen next week in England, but a survey suggests only a third say they can do so safely.
I hope I don't get teeth trouble, because we're all fucked, eh? Just won't cause major problems in people's lives. Including death. All part of depopulation agenda.
Hello and welcome if you're watching in the UK or around the world, and stay with us for the latest news and analysis from here and across the globe. I'm Anita McVeigh. The UK government has defended the timing of its decision to make face masks compulsory on public transport in England. From June the 15th, passengers travelling without a face covering could be fined. The British Medical Association.
What are we allowing our government to do?
Anywhere that can't ensure safe social distancing.
Forcing you to wear a face mask.
Coronavirus contact tracing.
You cannot live now
at the heart of England's coronavirus
unless you're getting on transport wearing a face mask. You cannot live. Come on, people. You think this is normal, do you? This is fucking highly distressing and upsetting. This fucking shit now. Still pumping it up. Still ramping it up.
Meanwhile, in France, the government's top scientific advisor there.
They're going to relapse so you can come out more, go shopping and all the rest of it.
In Scotland, it's emerged that a coronavirus epidemic,
and yet the measures
experts 2 years ago
are being ramped up.
Potential problems such as a lack of protective equipment. We'll begin today with this report from Keith Doyle.
If you are travelling to It does not seem that long ago that...
Come on, people, you've got to stand against this stuff. You've got to stand against
now it seems perfectly normal.
All this ridiculous
15th in England, it will be obligatory on buses,
heightened measures,
trams, ferries and planes. There will be some exceptions for children and disabled people, but the Transport Secretary said that wearing a face covering will be a condition of travel.
The scientists being very clear that they're struggling to, they've been struggling to provide the conclusive evidence on it. On balance, we're convinced that it certainly can't do any harm. We think it will do some good.
Can't do any harm. Is that all about living, is it? Walking around wearing a mask?
The most important thing is 2 meters social distancing. So if you've got 2 meters social distancing, then this is a marginal impact.
In Scotland, where face coverings are recommended on public transport,
think about it, people.
Consider making them compulsory.
Existing on this earth, you think it's normal
isn't possible, and Wales has not yet
to be wearing a face mask as you live a day-to-day basis, do you?
Which they said is overdue, and the doctors' union, the BMA, has asked why the
natural fresh air
brought in right away, and that it should be widened
is what you should be breathing. You're being told wear a face mask. They'll have to kill me, I'm telling you now. They'll have to kill me. There's no way on this earth I'm wearing a face mask in my lifetime.
With thousands of people in place to contact those who've come in contact with the virus.
The NHS COVID-19 app.
Part of this is a smartphone app, which is being trialled in the Isle of Wight.
I ain't got a smartphone and I'll never own one. Shove your app, shove your vaccine, shove your masks, shove your self-distancing.
We'll be running as soon as we think it is robust.
Okay, just not 15. Well, you said it'll be in place this month.
Well, it'll be rolled out across the UK this month.
I'd like to think we'll be able to manage it by this month, yes.
The 14-day quarantine for most arrivals into the UK, which starts on Monday, has caused a rift between the government and the airline industry. British Airways did
crazy, isn't it? People are in shops,
Secretary Priti Patel yesterday.
walking around, voluntary wearing a mask.
Industry is still a way off.
So clearly you're all right.
Let's get more now from our political correspondent.
But if you get on a buzz, you've got to wear a mask.
Many other countries have
a lot of this is a joke.
made it mandatory for people to be wearing face coverings.
In fact, it's all a fucking joke.
So why is it only now that in England the government is saying
we're being shafted, people, big time.
On public transport?
I think it's all about timing, Anita. Effectively, the lockdown is going to be eased further in England on June the 15th. So-called non-essential retail, department stores and so on are going to open up. And there is a feeling that it is likely that public transport, very few people using it at the moment, generally speaking, but the usage will increase because more people have to go to work in those shops, more people will be doing shopping, and it may be difficult to maintain the recommended 2 meters social distancing in some circumstances. Therefore,
shouldn't be doing any social distancing.
Reassurance face masks are being suggested by the government, but I didn't think it was a particularly hard sell for the new policy from the Transport Secretary Grant Shapps, who is introducing it. I mean, he said at various times in a BBC interview today, we had a little bit of it there.
Hugs, love, support.
That it was way down the list.
As indeed
it's important to keep you safe, way behind washing your hands, for example, and indeed that they
won't turn us all enemies against each other, do they? Fear each other,
I think not just amongst scientists, but behind the scenes.
Snarl at each other.
But when they should be introduced,
if you're one of the
it should be introduced.
decent people
ultimately facing fines or being refused
who doesn't comply to the masks
if they don't comply
and the distancing.
In little more than a week's time. But there has been widespread criticism on the timing of it, certainly. Certain groups, the British Medical Association,
all these people who come on telly like him,
pushing for this to happen much earlier when the virus.
They've got some other agenda, clearly, because how he can come on in any support
expressed his anger today that the government had delayed for so long
about wearing a mask or anything like that. It'd be on me, really.
Is the delay it's taken, because this could mean more people having caught the virus in the community, because there are some times where you simply can't keep a social distance.
Sadiq Khan,
and this delay,
fucking hell, I can't stand the guy.
Let's talk about the contact tracing app as part of the wider test and trace strategy here in England. The Minister Nadhim Zahawi saying last night, I'd like to think that we could manage it, getting the app up and running by the end of June. Why hasn't the government managed to do it before now when so many other countries have?
In many other countries have, there has been a
nobody's got the virus, no one's dying from the virus. Everyone's living their life normal. So, to some degree, if you know what I mean, obviously not the brain deads who are shitting themselves, wearing masks, and I've seen plenty of them.
At the Isle of Wight, despite the government saying this was a successful trial, it didn't sound like an entirely...
The evidence is clear to see.
Minister Nadhim Zahawi last night, it sounded more of an aspiration to get this done.
He's being used as the tool to usher in
perhaps this is a bit more of a
what they require,
these days, that actually physically
how they want this planet to run.
Is something which could be sufficient in itself. That said, we've had various people who are meant to be involved in contact tracing telling the BBC that they've been given very little to do. And the government's explanation of that is that as infection rates fall, this is probably a good thing, because
infection rates fall, they've never gone up.
But on a more worrying front, a senior executive in
so he's chatting garbage.
The process tended to suggest in a webinar which was obtained by the Guardian newspaper that we would not have a world-class system in place until September.
Okay, Ian, thank you very much. Ian Watson at Westminster. The pharmaceutical giant AstraZeneca has doubled its manufacturing capacity for its new potential COVID-19 vaccine to 2 billion doses after striking a number of deals that include 2 health organisations backed by Bill and Melinda Gates. The new deals are aimed at guaranteeing early supply
Bill and Melinda Gates.
to lower income countries. AstraZeneca's chief executive
the vaccine
spoke
pushes
to the BBC earlier about how any future
responsible for lower deaths in other countries.
So we are actually working together. By the way, I think that competition is good. I mean, competition
Life shouldn't be about living with having vaccines shot in you.
Makes people work fast.
It just seems logical to me that you shouldn't be born on this earth to then be shot up with loads of laboratory-made vaccines.
So we can deliver several
You're born with it, your own vaccine. It's called an immune system.
And before the end of this year.
And if you're in the UK and you want to know how many...
And then you're going to start fucking it up with vaccines.
You can find out by going to the BBC News website.
The parents believe in it.
See how many cases and indeed deaths there
They believe what the government tells you. You must get your kids shot up with all these vaccines. And they run to doctors and shoot the kids up with multiple vaccines.
Brazil has now overtaken Italy to become the country with the third highest number of deaths from coronavirus after the United States.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
Brazilian Health Ministry said more than 34,000 Brazilians
all doctored up figures. That's what you're hearing right there.
Almost 1,500 deaths in the last
there's no proof in any of that.
More than one death every minute.
And I could have fucking draw that. I could make that diagram myself and put it out. Oh, doctored figures.
People. Our reporter Camila Mota has been to Manaus, the largest city in the Amazon, and an area with one of the country's highest death rates from COVID-19.
Rubbish.
A month ago, he was an Uber driver. Now, Juraci collects bodies.
No meu primeiro dia, meio abalado, por motivo de tantos casos, era atrás do outro.
People collect bodies every day. People die every day. Every year.
Every day now he takes people on
That's cycle of life.
From homes and hospitals to the biggest graveyard.
I know, but we're not hearing all this though, are we?
That's how fast.
It's all everybody from coronavirus and COVID.
The service collects bodies for those who can't afford a proper burial. In April, they collected 793 bodies, almost 4 times more than the monthly average. Today, Juraci is on his way to the home of someone who died.
Ones, the older ones what have been bumped off. That's likely. Or ones what have fucking hung themselves. Because they can't cope with the dilemma of what's unfolding right before their eyes.
Manuel Martins da Silva died that day. He was 80. There is no
80?
funeral.
They are.
His body taken
Old people, 80.
Only 2 family members were allowed to attend. It's hard to say goodbye during COVID-19.
Nobody will stop me attending a member of my family's fucking grave. I'm telling you that now.
COVID-19 in Brazil. The infection rate here is still rising, with fears there aren't enough beds for
Look at all that scaremongering images, Luke. Scaremongering images.
Porque a demanda era muito grande e
funny you see all this, all these scaremongering images, and yet, if you've done any research, NHS staff have been laid off.
Doctors say it's reduced time spent in hospital.
Because there's been no work. Empty hospitals.
Many of these patients come from
empty wards. They've even said they've never been so empty. So if they've never been so empty, why are you seeing footage like this?
There are less than 500 beds. At the end of his shift,
people in critically ill from coronavirus.
Van, boots and clothes. He's following the rules strictly, but he's concerned that others are not.
We've seen a lot of the evidence in the earlier stages. Empty hospitals. What more evidence do you need? Look around you.
Like him,
I've seen no one drop dead in the street.
Waiting with a sense of unease for the peak still to come.
I was talking to another mate who's up on what I follow.
There were emotional scenes
the other day in
Minneapolis last
he said he's still a bit miffed about what was happening in China. People collapsing and dropping dead, and you saw people having seizures. But you ain't seen it worldwide, have you? Something different going on there. What was all that about?
The epidemic of racism led to his death. Thousands of people have demonstrated in American cities for a 10th consecutive day. The marches have been largely peaceful, as Jane O'Brien reports.
Something not right about this George Floyd thing. I'm just
to George Floyd from Minneapolis.
thinking something isn't quite right, adding up how they just...
Family members described him as a loving father, son...
People get shot by cops every fucking day, probably. Lightly. They do.
Made people feel like that.
What's this, all the big hype with this George Floyd thing?
For George, he's going to get it.
Is it being used as the second phase of an agenda? Think about it, people.
Reverend Al Sharpton, a black activist, spoke the eulogy, but also urged protesters to seize the moment.
The GoFundMe's been set up and they wanted to raise just over $1 million, and it's gone to nearly 13 million right now.
What happened to Floyd happens every day in this country.
Exactly. So why
health services
bang on about more about George Floyd?
It's time for us to stand up.
We know every death's bad. Every murder's bad. Every life is important.
Because of the coronavirus,
something isn't adding up quite right with this one. I'm just a bit suspicious.
People gathered at this makeshift memorial of flowers placed around the block where Mr. Floyd died when a police officer knelt on his neck.
It's still a crime scene, but it's also become a place for people to reflect and respond to the tragedy.
This is supposed to be the land of opportunity.
And why would you want to promote?
Look at this.
I can't breathe on flags and on your mask and stuff like that.
This has raised a whole new movement talking about Black Lives Matter and how we really need to come together.
Why would you want to promote that? I can't breathe.
Ended with 8 minutes and 46
I'm just not with that.
Silence to represent the amount of time Mr. Floyd was pinned to the ground and eventually stopped breathing.
Is he in that coffin?
His body will be taken to North Carolina for a public viewing.
We don't know, do we?
Then to Houston, Texas for burial. Jane O'Brien, BBC News, Minneapolis.
Well, the protests over George Floyd's death
on a flag. I can't breathe.
Reporting for a 10th day. They have been largely peaceful.
It's taking a piss, if you ask me.
In New York State, a video showed 2 police officers pushing an elderly man to the ground, seriously injuring his head. The incident was captured on video by a local reporter. It shows the man approaching police. One officer then pushes him with a baton and a second one pushes him with his hand. The 2 officers have been suspended without pay. The Supreme Court in the Australian state of New South Wales is
you give him these powers.
Whether to grant an emergency injunction.
He's open to abuse.
Thousands of people marching in Sydney on Saturday. The rally is in solidarity with
if he dies, are they going to have a fucking rally for him, whatever his name is?
Protest in Sydney on Tuesday.
Because it's exactly the same, isn't it?
Prime Minister Scott Morrison warned of the coronavirus.
Might not have had someone kneeling on his neck, but he's been pushed over by a police officer. If he died, are we going to have all this rallying now for him? He's a white man, but will we have it?
A separate protest in Melbourne is also being planned for Saturday.
Likely not.
Threats from officials to fine the organisers. The headlines for you now on BBC News. And the UK government defends the decision to make face coverings compulsory on public transport, but admits that
this is the worst one. Compulsory face masks on transport.
Overtakes Italy as the country with the 3rd highest coronavirus death total.
What rights has our government got to force you to wear a face mask on transport?
Buffalo in New York State after a video showed them.
You tell me what rights have our government got to do that to you? Powers have gone beyond belief.
Police say they have received hundreds of emails and calls from the public about a new suspect in the Madeleine McCann case. German detectives say they believe Madeleine, who disappeared in Portugal in 2007, is dead, and are investigating a convicted sex offender who's in prison in Germany. Well, I'm joined now by the businessman and Praia de Luz resident David Jones, who helped to look for Madeleine when she was first reported missing. David, thank you for joining us today. Take us back to that time, because of course with this new thread in the investigation you must be very much thinking about those early days in the search for Madeleine.
Well, first I want to say that with this new news, hopefully there'll be some closure for the McCann family when they get an answer, and that's the first thing I think should be thought about. And secondly,
a lot of suspicion surrounding this Madeleine McCann, isn't there?
Responsible by a lot of people for the.
And why hype it up again now?
And I think that again, this new
all these years on, and they get new information.
That would be a clear thing.
All of a sudden, telling us they've got shitloads of calls from the public.
Now. And I consider myself.
What, the public only just woke up?
It's a beautiful place, but it has had a lot of bad publicity. I have 5 children, and they grew up here. I've never thought of anything that's dangerous about the place at all. It's the total opposite. So I've done several interviews, and I say what I want to do is really defend Praia da Luz.
Yes, because the place, the location has unavoidably become associated with this case, and of course that's not the full story of the place, but you know, now it's back in the spotlight with this suspect in a German prison. It sounds, from what the police are saying, that he had quite a bit of notoriety in the area from people that you've been
richplanet.com, Richard Diol.
Are they aware of this individual?
We want to find out more information on Madeleine McCann.
Characters. This is a very beautiful place, and we get a lot of characters.
A great guy, Richard Diol, richplanet.com.
My business is a bar and restaurant, and I do remember banning somebody who kind of fitted this character, but it was a long time ago, and I can't remember his name but yeah, that happens down here, happens anywhere in a holiday resort. But we had a lot of young people who were doing their gap year and working locally, very lovely people. And what happens is they would come to my bar, and the night that this actually happened, I came back. I was down by the marina, which is about 4 kilometers away, and I came back, and the lights in my building were all out, which is, you know, I had a 2 o'clock license, so they shouldn't have been out. And I went in, my daughter's running the place, and I went in and I said, "What's happened?" And they said, "There's a young girl gone missing." And everybody that was in the bar, I closed the bar, everybody who was in the bar went looking. And we went looking for the next week, I guess.
And I guess for people who live there, who have a real love of this place, this community, as you do, clearly, David, you want closure. You want closure for the McCann family, first and foremost, but you want closure for Praia da Luz.
Yeah, we certainly do, yeah.
We want closure for a lot of things, but we'll never get it.
As I say, I'm a father. I can't imagine what it must have been like. But also to have been blamed for the disappearance, the parents have been blamed, and now that part of it seems to be taken away. That they were innocent, obviously.
Okay, well, obviously the police investigation continues into the suspect. David, thank you very much for talking to us today. David Jones, businessman and a resident there, long-time resident of Praia da Luz in Portugal. Now, let's return to the death of George Floyd at the hands of a white police officer in Minneapolis, which has sparked unrest and, of course, much peaceful protest across the United States and across the world. It revealed the deep racial divisions that still exist in the United States and brought into sharp relief the disproportionate...
I don't understand where deep racial religion comes from.
But in the wake of George Floyd's killing, questions of
governments create it.
Resonate around the world, and how institutional and
look at Britain, for instance,
can be combated.
The causing divide.
To discuss this, we can talk to author and activist Layla Saad, who joins us now.
Their own government's causing divide.
Layla, thank you very much for joining us today to talk about this. I was listening a little earlier to an interview that was on World Service with Laura
The truth
King,
never gets told, does it? The news is dead.
It's
been dead for years.
He was brutally beaten by 4 police.
Bought and paid for.
Acquitted by an almost
owned by the corruption
jury, and she said if your spirit is not disturbed by watching what happened,
the news is supposed to be set up to give you true news.
Problem. But she also said that more people who
don't get that.
African American are fed up, and that gives her hope. What are your feelings at this point? Hopeful that it could be different this time?
Well, we're absolutely seeing an uprising and protest, both in the
like I say, should have been an uprising
at a level at which we have
around the world over the actual lockdown.
so that definitely gives me a feeling of energy and
Oh no, everyone complies, goes in their homes.
Something is changing, that the conversation
imprisons themselves.
In a way that they haven't been
This George Floyd incident springs up and everyone fucking
are also sort of cautiously optimistic because
goes outdoors and starts protesting and
so long. George Floyd,
he's beyond belief, innit? He's beyond belief.
But he's just one in a very long line of black people who have been killed in this way. And so yes, optimistic, hopeful, but also cautious.
Well, you got a question and ask us why George Floyd, why the big attention on just George Floyd when
change than the conversation, of course. We've heard
likely black people killed by cops on a weekly basis, and they are.
Against people of colour. And
suspicious why George Floyd has got all the attention. That's why you've got a question.
How does that need to start to change?
Why? Something deeper is going on.
It's interesting because right now, you know, this
some agenda is going down here.
George Floyd's murder, but also
these crazy writings
that have just happened, you know,
smashing windows,
the incident with herself,
people paid,
the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, the murder of
these Antifa,
so on and so forth,
funded by George Soros,
causing this ignition. But many people are now looking at how does white supremacy and
bricks being left down corners, packs of bricks, even been reports in the UK that's been happening now.
In companies,
so
in non-profits.
Purposely planted to destroy towns and cities. Is that so businesses don't come back at all?
This conversation just ends with
so you got a question. Think of everything with an open mind.
That nothing has changed. We need to look at it all.
You know, some companies have been called out, Nike for example, expressing its dismay at the manner of George Floyd's death, but you know, someone pointing out there are no African Americans on its executive board. You know, if you look at education, I noticed a petition on change.org yesterday saying that there must be greater teaching here in the UK of Britain's colonial past.
Why we've got to be divided with each other, I don't know anyway. Don't matter what the fucking hell colour your skin is.
Absolutely.
Well, that's the creation, isn't it?
Studied in my school.
Governments run the show.
With the British curriculum the whole time, and I don't remember.
And they stop all the divide. No, they love the divide. They love all this tension and divide. Divide and conquer.
The world, and it's important to remember that the events that we're seeing right now in the U.S. and the racism that is steeped in their history is not separate.
Every life matters. Not just black lives, every life matters.
From a very young age of
what about white lives matter?
We're having these conversations. Otherwise, people will think about racism in terms of these individual acts of violence, these consciously chosen acts of violence with no connection to.
It's going to get worse, folks, isn't it? It's going to get worse. It is getting worse.
Historical events that have shaped what we see today.
It's being moulded, I think. The NWO is being moulded as we speak.
To say nothing, actually. So what do you say to white people who will say, well,
that's what it's all about.
Racist, but you know, what more can they do to actually show that solidarity and to make a change?
You know, this idea that I'm not racist, that the racists are those people over there, is actually what keeps...
Make a change. They're talking about making a change for black guys, eh?
To the reality that while they may not have consciously chosen thoughts and beliefs...
The change is coming, folks.
They've been conditioned into this system...
And it's far bigger than worrying about a one black man's death. Like I say, it's tragic, don't get me wrong. But the change is coming. Global change. And it's far worth fighting more for what's really coming than over one man's black death, tell you.
How are you able to move in your life in ways that are easier than people?
Should be fighting for the true agenda, what's unfolding. That's what we really need to be fighting for.
To the bad ones, right? The opposite of the good ones.
But these sheep can't even see.
Just get rid of those, then we will have this post-racial society. What we're not looking at is
when it arrives and they'll realise what they're living in, it'll be far too late.
Don't identify as racist, racially oppressed black and brown.
I've had enough now recording this. I'm switching off.
Systemic racism. So everybody is complicit in the system. Everybody needs to take accountability for it, and that starts with doing that self-examination work.